What's going on YouTube? This is Rabo back at the bench, and today I've got another cut or carry knife review. This time looking at the Kizer Azo HIC-CUP, but I'm just gonna call it the HIC-CUP because that's what's printed on the blade and it's a much catchier name. So this is the Kizer HIC-CUP. It is in, where is it? 154 cm right there. You can see that Kizer logo. We've got, I think, a model number back there. Designer mark right there, and then the HIC-CUP. So this is a knife that looked really cool to me. I mean, honestly, that's why I picked it up. It's one of Kizer's mini button lock knives, and I had not reviewed a knife in this price range in a little while, and had not checked out a Kizer in a little while, and I had not looked at a button lock. So it kind of checked some boxes for me, and I just thought the blade was super cool. So that is why I picked it up. I've carried it for a couple weeks, and now I'm gonna do the review. So before we get into this, let me go ahead and do a size comparison, and then we can do the cut or carry. So HIC-CUP and a couple knives that I grabbed. So let's do these two first. So Ontario Rat number 2, which has not made an appearance in a while, but still a very solid knife all these years later. I think I actually still need to review the Rat 1. I think I want to say, I don't think I ever did that. Anyway, and then the Laconico Keen, which is one of my favorite knives. Something, I don't know, there's some similarity there in my head. But one that was surprisingly similar after a little while is my go-to K-Bar Dozier. And one of the primary reasons, and this will kind of segue into the cut or carry review, is the blade. So the blade is what really attracted me to the HIC-CUP here. And if you look, it is somewhat similar to the Dozier. So both kind of these drop point blades. Now you can see on the Kizer, it's got that steep swedge at the top there, but somewhat similar geometry, and I don't know, kind of reminiscent. So I love the Dozier here, and so maybe that's why I was a big fan of the looks of the HIC-CUP. Okay, so let's, I guess with that, get into the things that I like about the Kizer HIC-CUP. So first things first, the blade. So one, I just was immediately attracted to this blade because I thought it just looked really sweet. You have some really bold lines here and some kind of a bold profile. So you got this nice drop point, really nice blade to me, nice grind there. I think it's a really aggressive but really nice swedge right there. And then if you notice, it seems to taper out really subtly, but really nice. And you can notice that the thumb hole here matches, not perfectly, but kind of matches that same profile as the blade, which is kind of a nice touch. So in general, huge fan of the blade. 154 cm is fine. It's not my favorite, but pretty solid. No issues there. I like the looks of the blade. The functionality of the blade has been really good. One of my comments on the knife overall, maybe a bit too large, maybe a bit too long. I think it would translate well scaled down just slightly. But I think this is a phenomenal blade, and one that I would carry all the time, if everything else checks out. So big fan of that. I think this type of blade is one that I gravitate towards. It can do a lot of things, from slicing, opening. You've got the drop point is just really versatile to me, and so I'm a big fan of that. Other things that I like, if you've watched the channel for any amount of time, I am a sucker for green micarta knives, and I'm actually kind of light on them at the moment. I did have a few. I probably should have grabbed those, but if you have green micarta, chances are I'm buying it. So that was another thing I really liked. Just aesthetically, I think it's a really nice look. Keeps the knife kind of understated, gives you a little bit of grip, but nothing too crazy. I think it wears and ages very well, and so generally a big fan of green micarta. I think this one's done very well. In general, I think the scales are done really well, and I'm going to close this for a minute just to give you a close-up, but I think they're done pretty well. So you've got this right here where you get to see a couple of the layers, which I think looks pretty nice. Nothing too crazy. You've got a cutout here where the button is for the button lock, And otherwise you just get kind of the varied look and uniqueness of a material like this, where everyone's going to be a little bit different. And that's one of the things that I really like about Micarta. You've just got that kind of, I don't know what the word is, but just kind of that authentic look for a scale, especially on a more of a budget knife. So that's pretty cool. Other things I like, I think the pocket clip, look, this is, in 2023, this is kind of what you're seeing everywhere. And I think for many years, people really wanted deep carry fold over clips, and they wanted those that, had accessible screws, could be, put on both sides. You can only carry this tip up. You can't carry it tip down, which is fine with me, but it is ambidextrous, so you can swap that around. But this clip is pretty much what you're seeing on a lot of knives like this from the bigger brands. So it's nothing special. It doesn't look particularly good or bad. It just kind of is pretty basic, but it's effective and it works, and I don't mind this at all. I like it. It would be nice maybe to see something new, but I think it works just fine. So that one's kind of a thing that I like, in the sense that I think it feels good in the pocket. It holds it, where it needs to be, but it's nothing too fancy. So no complaints there. You can see obviously that I have used this knife and tend to catch things on my pocket. The ergos, I think, are pretty good, not great. In fact, I'll talk about those in just a minute. The other thing I forgot to mention is the sharpening choil right there, which I think is a nice little addition, or a nice little thing to have. You can see, like on the Dozier, you don't have that, and as a result, I don't know if you can see, but I'm starting to wear past the blade coating there. So definitely a nice thing to have for longevity of the knife. The last thing I'll say on things that I like about this knife, so you have this opening. There's two different ways to open the knife. So, or I guess you could have other ways. I guess you could front flip it. Yep. So there's a couple different ways you can open it. That jimping runs all the way down and around. So you could do this like a front flipper. That's not really going to be practical. You could use the button lock, so you could disengage the button lock and swing it open, but there are some problems with that I'll talk about in a minute. But probably the way that most people are going to use this is you're going to use this kind of like a Spidey hole, right? So you have a thumb hole here, and you're just going to open it like that. Probably the most practical way to do it. Now, in itself, that is not super easy to do. It's fine. It works just fine. But Kizer does sell these thumb studs here, and this can just be opened with, I'm not going to do it, but this can just be opened with your Torx. This is a T8. And you can just, I guess I will do it. You can just open this up. You can see it's two parts. I will not install it right now, but you can just thread that onto here, and you can basically add your thumb stud wherever you want to on this. That is how I've been carrying it, with the thumb stud. I find the thumb stud to be, I don't know if I want to say a necessary add-on to the knife, but definitely makes opening the knife a lot easier and more natural. So while I think I like the look of the open thumb hole here, I think in practice, like the thumb stud is something that I would want. But you can pick these up from Kizer, and I would definitely recommend that. So it's pretty cool, as you see a little fly coming across the workbench. It is pretty cool that you have some, some modding capabilities here. Okay, so those are things that I like about the Kizer HIC-CUP. So now we get to things that I don't like about the Kizer HIC-CUP. And honestly, just to give you kind of a heads up, like the theme of this will be, this is a really cool design, and it is pretty poor execution by the maker. So the issues that I have with this knife are really in the build quality. So looking at it aesthetically, I really like it. Looking at the blade, the handles, all of that stuff, I'm on board. But a couple issues. So one is ergos. This is a little bit of more of design and not build quality, but I don't find the knife to be that comfortable in the hand. I have a hot spot where this pocket clip is. These I don't find to be useful. The finger choil thing, you have to really get it right for it to be good, and a lot of times, sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. So you look at something like the Keen here, which just doesn't have anything. You do what you want to do. I find this much more comfortable than the HIC-CUP here. Same with the Dozier, right? The Dozier is pretty kind of do whatever you want to do, but I find that to be much better than this, which forces your hand in a position that I don't really want. I would much rather be up a little bit higher on the knife. Back here feels a little bit out of control. It's really digging in that pocket clip back there. It just feels kind of unnatural and not really where I want to hold the knife. And so you have all of this space right here that's just kind of wasted, and you feel like you're kind of backed off further than you want from the knife. So ergos are not there for me. So that is kind of one design thing. But apart from that, the big issue I have with this, so this is a button lock. The button lock is not good. So it's pretty sticky, which you can imagine. It's hard to show that on camera, but yeah, it's going to be pretty hard to show that, but it's pretty sticky. But the bigger issue is that it's just not very fast. It's not very smooth. So if I disengage this, it will close, but not all the way. And so I have to kind of shake it closed. It will also have a tendency to bounce back. And so it's somewhat difficult to actually drop this shut, because it will actually bounce in there and then bounce all the way back out. So you have to like time it just right, which is not really what you want to do on something like a compression lock or a button lock. You want to press it, let it close. However, I rarely get it to actually close. Typically it's something like this. That can be somewhat unsafe if you're not looking and you try to stick this back in the pocket, or you grab it, for me, what I've found is I have to actually like disengage it and then just push it closed. Not what you want on something like a button lock, where certainly part of the appeal is the ability to kind of swing it open and swing it shut. But the thing that drives me even more crazy than that is that when I open this knife, it sounds like this. Do you hear that? Yeah, I don't really know how to describe that other than wimpy, but it does not open with a lot of confidence. If you contrast that, and granted, I am not trying to make a comparison between two knives that are very different prices, but if you think about something like that, that's more what you tend to hear with a knife, and you have a lot of confidence in. Something like that. When you contrast that with this, it just sounds goofy, and honestly, it makes it sound kind of cheap. I don't exactly know what this is, if this is something about the button lock or flimsy liners. I'm not really sure, but at the end of the day, it's just bad. It reminds me of like a car door that you know what I mean? Like you have a car door that you close and it sounds really good. It just gives you a lot of confidence in the car, but then sometimes you have one that just sounds kind of ratchety. This one sounds like that to me. So it's not like a functional, practical thing, other than you don't want to be around your friends and open this up and let them hear that. So there are just some things like that about the knife that I find to be inferior quality. I think the design is really, really cool. That's what drew me to this knife. And honestly, when we're kind of in an oversaturated market, that's a great thing that I would see a design like this and be like, oh, I want to hold that blade. Like I want to carry that. I really like those green micarta scales. But in the pocket, over only a few days, the build quality just wasn't there. It just felt pretty cheap to me. So unfortunately, this is somewhat common, really cool design, but poor execution at mass scale. And that was the case for this. So for me, this is a cut. Probably would have been a carrier at a nicer quality, but for me, it's a cut. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.